This is the story of a man the world crowned a king, but only few know the storms that nearly destroyed him. Before Aquaman, before the fame, before the legend, there was a boy searching for home, a warrior shaped by pain, and a survivor who rose from every fall. This is the true journey of Jason Momoa, the man behind the myth. Before the world knew Jason Momoa as a powerful actor or a larger-than-life figure, he began as a quiet, the curious child surrounded by the simple beauty of Honolulu. Born on the 1st of August 1979, he entered the world on the warm shores of Hawaii, a place where the ocean is part of everyday life. His family background was mixed and meaningful. His father, Joseph Momoa, was a native Hawaiian artist, deeply connected to the culture, the land, and the traditions of the islands. His mother, Connie Lemke, was of German, Irish, and Native American heritage, and worked as a photographer who loved capturing life's small moments. Both parents were creative, gentle, and expressive in their own ways, and their talents naturally shaped how Jason saw the world. As a small child, Jason formed a strong bond with the ocean. The waves were not just water to him, they were a part of his daily life. He grew up hearing the sound of the tide early in the morning, feeling warm sand under his feet, and watching the sunlight shine across the sea. The ocean gave him comfort, excitement, and peace. It was the first thing that made him feel connected to something larger than himself. It also became the place where he learned confidence, movement, and a sense of belonging. Swimming, climbing rocks, and exploring the beach were normal parts of his childhood, and these simple activities slowly shaped his personality. He learned to be brave, curious, and respectful of nature at a young age. His father's work as an artist influenced him as well. Jason spent time watching his father paint, mix colors, and express feelings through images, even as a child. He understood that art could show emotions without words. This helped him develop a deep appreciation for creativity. His mother's love for photography added another layer to his early life. She always had a camera, taking pictures of everyday things. She taught him to notice details, like how light falls on a face or how shadows move. This made Jason more observant and helped him understand people and their emotions. The home Jason grew up in was full of love, softness, and freedom. His parents encouraged him to explore, to ask questions, and to express himself. They allowed him to grow naturally, without forcing him into strict expectations. He felt safe, understood, and surrounded by warmth. The Hawaii community around him also played a big role. Family gatherings, local traditions, cultural celebrations, and the kindness of neighbors gave him a strong foundation. He experienced early joy in simple moments, playing near the water, listening to stories from elders, and watching his relatives share food and laughter. All of this made him feel deeply rooted in his identity as a Hawaiian child. Even though he was very young, these early years shaped many parts of his future personality. His calm confidence, love for adventure, strong sense of family, and respect for culture all began during this stage of life. The ocean became a symbol of strength and comfort for him, and the artistic influence of his parents shaped how he later understood roles, characters, and emotions as an actor. Nothing about his childhood felt artificial or rushed. Life was slow, peaceful, and full of meaning. But this period of joy did not last forever. His parents' relationship slowly changed, and their paths began to move apart. Jason was still too young to understand why adults separate or why families sometimes shift. For him, the world simply began to feel different. A quiet sense of change settled into the home, marking the end of the easy, warm childhood he had known. The ocean, which had always been close, was about to slip away from his daily life. But the sea that cradled him would soon become only a memory lost, in an instant he never saw coming. Some childhoods echo with laughter. Jason's echoed with distance. When his parents separated, he was still too young to fully understand what was happening. One day he had a home filled with two creative parents, ocean air, family warmth, and familiar faces. The next, his world quietly shifted. His mother made the difficult choice to raise him on her own, and that decision meant leaving Hawaii behind. For Jason, it was a sudden break from everything he had ever known. There were no long explanations, no time to prepare. Life simply changed, and he had to follow. His mother moved them to Norwalk, Iowa, a place completely different from the island life Jason was born into. The moment he arrived, the difference hit him deeply. The open fields stretched endlessly instead of the ocean. The air felt colder, the sky looked different, and the sense of community he once knew was gone. Snow replaced sand, silence replaced the sound of waves. The warm, familiar world of Hawaii felt like a dream that had disappeared overnight. He was surrounded by people who didn't look like him, talk like him, or understand the life he came from. He felt like a piece of a puzzle that didn't fit anywhere. In Iowa, the cultural shock was heavy. Jason was a Hawaiian boy with long hair, different features, and a very different background from the children around him. At school, he often felt out of place. Kids asked questions he didn't know how to answer. Teachers couldn't understand why he struggled to adjust. He wasn't just dealing with a new school, he was dealing with a new world. The distance from his father added a deeper layer of confusion and sadness. Even though his mother tried her best to give him comfort, the absence of the ocean and the loss of his father's presence created a quiet emptiness inside. Jason felt that emptiness most during moments when life slowed down. Walking home from school, sitting alone at lunch, or looking out the window during long winter days made him realize how alone he felt. It wasn't dramatic or visible to others, but it was a deep, constant feeling of being far from where he belonged. While other children moved through life easily, Jason moved through it with questions. Who am I? Where do I belong? Why does everything feel so far away? Because he didn't fit in socially, he began searching for something that would make him feel connected again. Nature became his safe place. Even though Iowa was nothing like Hawaii, he still found comfort in climbing trees, exploring fields, running through storms, and testing his limits outdoors. He started to treat the natural world like a friend. When he climbed the tallest trees, he imagined cliffs rising above the ocean. When he ran against strong winds, he imagined Hawaii's waves pushing against him. Nature helped him feel alive when everything else felt unfamiliar. It reminded him of the bravery and freedom he once felt back home. This period created the emotional wounds that shaped him as a young man. He didn't grow up surrounded by noise or cheer. He grew up surrounded by silence. But that silence later became the emotional base for many of the characters he played. The loneliness he felt as a child, the quiet longing, the feeling of being separated from home, these emotions helped him connect deeply with roles that required strength, vulnerability, and unspoken pain. Khal Drogo's intensity, Aquaman's inner conflict, and his other powerful characters all carry a part of that boy who felt lost in Iowa. Even though Iowa was difficult, it forced Jason to develop resilience. He learned how to rely on himself, how to find comfort in small things, and how to stay strong even when he felt invisible. The hardship didn't break him, it shaped him. It built a foundation he didn't recognize at the time but would rely on for the rest of his life. And just when he thought the world had forgotten him, destiny whispered again but from continents away. A restless heart becomes a compass when the world refuses to be home. After finishing high school, Jason tried to follow a clear and stable path. He chose marine biology, partly because he loved the ocean, and partly because it felt like a way to stay connected to the world he had lost when he left Hawaii. But even as he studied, he felt a quiet discomfort inside him. He enjoyed learning, but the classroom walls felt too tight. The lectures, books, and routines couldn't satisfy the feeling that something bigger waited for him. His spirit was too restless, too curious, too hungry for experience. He realized he was not meant for a life that stayed still. Instead of ignoring that feeling, Jason listened to it. He decided to explore the world before finishing his degree. That choice took him far from Iowa and far from anything familiar. His first major stop was Paris. There, he tried to understand art in a new way. He spent time studying paintings, sketching, and learning how emotions could be expressed through simple lines and colors. Paris taught him how to observe people closely, how to pay attention to small expressions, and how feelings can be shown without speaking. These lessons later helped him as an actor, even though he didn't realize it at the time. From Paris, his journey led him to Tibet. This was a very different world, quiet, spiritual, and centered around discipline and inner peace. Jason spent time with monks and observed how they lived. Their lifestyle was simple, yet deeply meaningful. He learned how silence can teach you things that words cannot. He learned that discipline can calm the mind, and that peace comes from understanding yourself, not from running away from life. Meditation, stillness, and reflection became part of his experience there. Tibet gave him a sense of grounding he had never felt before. These travels changed him in many ways. In Paris, he grew as an artist. In Tibet, he grew as a person. He learned to slow down, to listen, and to understand his own emotions. These experiences planted the seeds of maturity that would guide him later in life. His confidence, his ability to express deep feelings without many words, and his strong, centered presence all began to form during this period. The world was becoming his teacher, shaping him into someone who could handle both challenges and opportunities with strength. Eventually, after months of wandering, he felt the pull of home again. Even with all he had learned abroad, something inside him kept reminding him of where he came from. The ocean he had grown up with, the culture he had lost, and the identity he had been searching for all seemed to call out to him. Yet for all he learned abroad, the ocean still called him back, demanding a choice that would change everything. Home. It isn't always soft. It can test you harder than exile ever did. When Jason finally returned to Hawaii, he expected comfort, peace, and the feeling of belonging he had missed for so many years. But reality was much harsher than memory. He came back with no money, no plan, and no place to stay. The ocean greeted him, but life did not open its arms easily. Instead of finding stability, he found himself starting from zero. At times, he had nowhere to sleep. Some nights he rested on park benches near the water, wrapped in whatever he had, listening to the waves that once felt like lullabies, but now sounded more like reminders of how far he still had to go. He lived day by day, trying to make enough money to buy simple meals or pay for a small place to stay. Hunger became a familiar feeling, but he never let it break him. He believed that if he stayed strong and kept moving forward, something would eventually change. He found a job in a surf shop, stacking boards, cleaning equipment, helping tourists. It was simple work, but it was honest, and it kept him connected to the ocean he loved. He went to work barefoot, tired, and sometimes hungry, but he showed up every day. Even during the hardest moments, he refused to lose his spirit. His love for Hawaii pushed him to keep going, even when life felt too heavy. The surf shop job did not pay much, but it became the place where everything began to shift. One afternoon, a Japanese designer named Tao Kikuchi walked in. He noticed Jason immediately, not because of fame or charm, but because of his natural presence. Jason had no modeling experience, no polished look, and no training, but he had something different, a strong, raw energy shaped by struggle and survival. Tao approached him and offered him a chance to model. At first, Jason didn't take it seriously. He laughed it off, unsure if the offer was real or just another passing moment that would lead nowhere. But Tao was serious. He saw potential in Jason that others had missed. Within a short time, Jason began modeling jobs that slowly changed his situation. He learned how to pose, how to express confidence, and how to carry himself in front of a camera. His unique look and natural strength stood out in Hawaii's modeling scene. Soon, he gained attention and respect. In 1999, everything shifted again when Jason was named Model of the Year in Hawaii. For someone who had been sleeping on benches and struggling to afford food, it was a huge achievement. It didn't make him rich or famous, but it gave him something he had not felt in a long time: hope. It proved that hard work, even in the toughest moments, could lead to unexpected opportunities. Winning this award opened new doors and showed him a path he hadn't imagined for himself. Modeling helped him rebuild confidence and allowed him to dream bigger. It also gave him his first real stability after years of uncertainty. He finally felt like life was moving forward instead of holding, beating him down. But modeling was only a doorway, and behind it waited a chance at destiny crowned with sun and surf. Before fame tested him, love softened him. After his small breakthrough in modeling, Jason decided to try something he had never imagined growing up in Iowa or even in Hawaii: acting. In 1999, Baywatch Hawaii announced open auditions, and more than 1,300 hopefuls showed up, each dreaming of a role that could change their life. Jason walked in as an unknown young man, tall, strong, and full of raw energy. He had no formal training and no long list of experience, but he had a natural presence that made people look twice. His confidence, shaped by years of hardship, made him stand out. When the final decisions were made, Jason landed the role of Jason Ioane. This single moment gave him the first real step into a future he didn't yet understand. Baywatch Hawaii became Jason's classroom. He learned how to act in front of cameras, how to memorize lines, how to control his expressions, and how to perform under pressure. The long days on the beach, surrounded by cast and crew, helped him develop discipline and a stronger work ethic. But the most meaningful part of this period wasn't just the show. It was the person he met there: Simone Jade McKinnon, an Australian actress working in the same series. Simone was 6 years older than Jason, experienced, confident, and grounded. She quickly noticed something special in him: his kindness, his intensity, and the mix of softness and strength he carried. Jason, who had spent much of his early life feeling out of place, found comfort and acceptance with her. Their connection grew naturally and quietly. They trained together, talked late into the evenings, and supported each other as they navigated a new industry. While Jason was spontaneous and adventurous, Simone was calm and thoughtful. Their personalities balanced each other in a way that felt steady and warm. As months turned into years, their relationship deepened. Simone encouraged Jason to take acting more seriously, helping him understand scripts, emotions, and the level of commitment the craft required. With her support, Jason began to develop more confidence in himself as an actor. She believed in him before he fully believed in himself. Their bond created a sense of stability that Jason had been missing since childhood. For the first time in many years, he felt emotionally grounded. By the early 2000s, Jason and Simone had become inseparable. Their relationship grew stronger as Jason's small acting jobs slowly expanded. They traveled together, shared hopes for the future, and imagined building a life side by side. In 2004, after nearly 5 years together, Jason proposed to Simone. She said yes, and they became engaged. The engagement was private and simple, celebrated quietly between the two of them and their close circle. At this point, Jason's career was slowly gaining momentum with roles in shows like North Shore and Johnson Family Vacation. Life felt stable, hopeful, and full of potential. But careers in acting often demand movement, and movement can slowly separate hearts. In 2005, Simone returned to Australia to film the series McLeod's Daughters, while Jason stayed in the United States to continue building his path in Hollywood. At first, They tried to stay connected through calls and messages. But distance has a way of changing routines, softening habits, and pulling two people onto different tracks. Their lives became busier, their schedules harder to match, and the connection that once felt effortless began to feel strained. There was no fight, no betrayal, no dramatic ending, just a slow, quiet fading that neither of them wanted, but both eventually accepted. The breakup was painful, mostly because it happened in silence. There were no harsh words, only the understanding that love sometimes cannot survive distance and timing. Jason later said in interviews that sometimes people simply grow apart, even when they care deeply for each other. Simone had given him stability, kindness, and support during the most important early years of his career. She helped him become more focused and disciplined. Jason carried that influence with him long after they parted. Even though their relationship ended, it remained an important chapter in his life. It taught him what love felt like before fame complicated everything. It showed him what a healthy bond looked like and what it meant to be committed. And it prepared him, emotionally and mentally, for the next major turning point of his life. But as this love faded like a tide, another love destined long before was about to rise. Some loves arrive like storms, others arrive like prophecy. In 2005, shortly after his relationship with Simone ended, Jason walked into a small bar in New York with friends. He had no idea that this ordinary night would change the entire direction of his life. When he looked across the room, he saw Lisa Bonet, the same woman he had watched on TV as a boy, the same woman he once told his mother he wanted to marry someday. To him, she was a familiar face from his childhood, someone he admired long before he ever met her. Seeing her in person felt unreal, almost like life was answering a request he made years earlier without expecting anything back. Their meeting happened naturally. A mutual friend introduced them, and the moment they started talking, the connection was immediate. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation. Their conversation flowed easily, as if they had known each other for years instead of minutes. Lisa's calm presence balanced Jason's energetic nature. He made her laugh, and she made him feel understood. They spent the entire night talking, walking through the city, and discovering how naturally their personalities fit together. By the end of the night, Jason knew something important had begun. He later joked in interviews that he was a mess inside because he couldn't believe he was standing next to the woman he had admired his whole life. Their bond grew quickly. They moved to Topanga Canyon, a quiet, artistic area of California surrounded by nature. It became their home, a peaceful place filled with creativity, warm lighting, and family energy. This home marked the beginning of a new life for Jason. Lisa brought stability, maturity, and peace. Jason brought warmth, humor, and loyalty. Together, they created a space that felt safe and loving, far from the noise and pressure of Hollywood. Their family grew in a way that felt natural and harmonious. In 2007, they welcomed their first child together, Lola. A year later, their son, Nakoa Wolf, was born. Jason became a devoted father, deeply involved in his children's lives. He cooked for them, played with them, and took them on outdoor adventures. He treasured every simple moment: school mornings, bedtime stories, beach days, and family meals. At the same time, he built a strong relationship with Zoe Kravitz, Lisa's daughter, from her earlier marriage to Lenny Kravitz. Jason treated Zoe like his own child, and she respected him for the love and support he brought into her life. For 16 years, Jason and Lisa lived in what many people saw as a steady, loving partnership. They shared values, respected each other's space, and raised their children in a home filled with warmth. They kept their private life away from the spotlight, focusing on family instead of fame. Their home in Topanga Canyon became a sanctuary where everyone felt free to be themselves. Jason often said that Lisa helped him grow into the man he wanted to become. She gave him structure, emotional grounding, and a sense of calm he had never experienced before. But even the strongest relationships can face quiet changes. Over time, life began to pull them in different directions. Jason's career started rising rapidly, especially after his roles in Game of Thrones and Aquaman. His schedule became demanding, filled with long filming days, international travel, and public appearances. He was constantly moving, constantly working, constantly under pressure. Lisa, on the other hand, valued stillness, privacy, and a slower pace of life. She had already lived through decades of public attention and didn't want that lifestyle anymore. The difference in their lifestyles slowly created emotional distance. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It didn't come from arguments or betrayal. It came from everyday moments, missed dinners, separate routines, different priorities. Their children grew older, their schedules changed, and their connection began to shift in ways neither of them expected. They loved each other deeply, but they were growing in different directions. Both felt it, but both hoped things would settle with time. The pandemic in 2020 made these differences clearer. Being home for long periods forced them to confront the distance that had quietly formed between them. Jason needed movement and adventure to feel balanced. Lisa needed calm and grounding. Their lives no longer moved in the same rhythm. They still respected each other, still cared, but the partnership that once felt effortless now felt heavier. In 2022, they announced their separation. Their statement was gentle and respectful, reflecting the love they still had for each other. They didn't blame each other. They simply accepted that their paths had changed. After 16 years of shared life, they made the difficult decision to live separately. It was painful for both, but they handled it with maturity. They chose peace instead of conflict, understanding instead of resentment. But the same world that made him a king would begin tearing the kingdom apart brick by silent brick. One audition changed not just his career, but the world's idea of strength. When Jason heard about the casting for Game of Thrones, he knew the competition would be intense. He wasn't the first choice on presented paper, and he didn't have the kind of resume that impressed studios. But he had something else, a deep, raw energy shaped by years of struggle. When he entered the audition room, instead of reading lines in a normal way, he asked if he could perform a haka, a traditional Polynesian warrior dance. The room watched in complete shock as Jason transformed in front of them. His movements were sharp and powerful, his voice loud and emotional. When he finished, the room went silent. That performance secured him the role of Khal Drogo instantly. Playing Drogo changed everything. Jason went from being a mostly unknown actor to someone recognized around the world. Game of Thrones was unlike anything he had ever done. The show quickly became a massive success, watched by millions in many countries. Jason's character was strong, fierce, and respected, and he played the role with intensity and focus. Drogo didn't speak much, so Jason had to express emotions with his eyes, body language, and presence. His ability to communicate without many lines showed a kind of strength and depth people weren't expecting. Fans admired him for his physical power, but also for the softness he showed in scenes with Emilia Clarke, who played Daenerys. The combination made Drogo one of the most memorable characters of the entire series. But behind the scenes, the role took a real toll on him. The physical demands were tough, the costumes were heavy, the long hours were exhausting, and the emotional scenes required deep focus. He gave everything he had to the role, wanting to prove himself in a big industry that had not always made room for someone like him. Even though he looked strong and confident on screen, he felt pressure every day to live up to the expectations of the show and its huge fan base. Then, just as fast as fame arrived, it disappeared. Drogo's storyline ended at the end of Season 1, and with it, the public spotlight faded almost overnight. Jason expected that his performance would lead to many new opportunities, but the opposite happened. Instead of more roles, he found himself facing long periods of silence. Casting directors didn't know where he fit. Hollywood didn't seem sure what to do with someone of his size, look, and background. People loved Drogo, but they didn't see Jason beyond that role. He later explained that once Drogo died, he struggled to find work. The same fans who praised him didn't realize that he was again facing financial pressure and uncertainty. Fame can be strange. It can lift someone to the top, then drop them just as fast. For Jason, the fall was painful. He went from being recognized everywhere to wondering how he would pay his bills. The emotional shift was heavy. One moment he was part of one of the biggest shows in the world, and the next he was sitting in a quiet home, hoping for the next opportunity. This sudden emptiness began shaping a new stage of his life. It forced him to face fear and doubt he had pushed aside during filming. It reminded him of earlier years of Iowa, of loneliness, of feeling unseen. But this time, the silence felt even heavier because it came right after success. And as the roar faded to silence, Jason faced a darkness he never expected: being forgotten. What happens when the world stops applauding? After Game of Thrones, Jason expected more acting offers, but instead, the roles disappeared. From 2012 to 2014, he faced one of the hardest financial periods of his life. He had a family to support, bills to pay, and a home to maintain, but almost no income was coming in. People assumed that being on a famous show meant he was financially secure, but the truth was very different. His character was only in one season, and the pay was not enough to carry him through the years that followed. Slowly, savings ran out. Opportunities dried up. The calls from agents became less frequent, and Jason found himself slipping into a place he never thought he would return: to financial struggle. Things became so difficult that he had to borrow money just to get by. He spoke openly later about how embarrassing and stressful it felt. As a father, he wanted to give his children stability. As a partner, he wanted to support Lisa and contribute to their home. But during this period, even paying basic bills felt like climbing a mountain. The worry never left his mind. Every day felt uncertain. He didn't know how long the struggles would last, or if his career would ever recover. He questioned whether he was good enough, whether he had made the right choices, and whether Hollywood had already pushed him aside. The financial stress created tension at home. Jason loved his family deeply, but the pressure of not having enough money weighed on him every single day. He tried to hide his fear, but it followed him into the night. Some nights, he stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep, wondering if he would lose everything he had built. He felt responsible for his children and for the life they lived. It was a dark time, filled with heavy thoughts, long nights, and quiet worry. He had faced hardship before, but facing it as a father made it feel much heavier. Instead of giving up, Jason decided to take control of his future. If Hollywood wasn't giving him roles, he would create his own work. From this mindset came the birth of Pride of Gypsies, his own production company. He wanted a space where creativity wasn't limited by Hollywood's expectations. He wanted freedom to tell stories in his own way. Starting the company gave him a sense of purpose again. It was a risk, especially during a time when money was already tight, but Jason believed that if he didn't shape his own path, no one else would. With Pride of Gypsies, he wrote, directed, produced, and starred in Road to Paloma, a small independent film released in 2014. Making the movie wasn't easy. He didn't have a big budget or a large team, but he had passion, determination, and a story he believed in. The film wasn't created for money or fame. It was created to remind him of who he was, what he loved, and why he started acting in the first place. Road to Paloma helped him heal during a period of doubt. It allowed him to express emotions he had been carrying for years, and even though the movie didn't make him rich, it gave him confidence again. It reminded him that he had talent, vision, and something valuable to offer. Slowly, the fear of vanishing began to fade. He had proved to himself that he could stand back up, that he could create his own opportunities, that he didn't need to rely fully on Hollywood's approval to move forward. This period of struggle shaped him into a stronger, more focused person. The pain pushed him to grow in ways that success never could. But just as he learned to rebuild himself, Hollywood called again, this time with the force of a tidal wave. The world saw a king. They never saw the man drowning behind the crown. When DC first approached Jason for the role of Aquaman, he didn't immediately understand how big the opportunity was. He had gone from being broke and unsure of his place in Hollywood to suddenly being considered for one of the most iconic comic book characters. At first, the idea felt strange to him. Aquaman was traditionally blonde, clean-cut, and very different from Jason's look and personality. But DC wanted to reinvent the character. They wanted someone strong, rugged, and unique. Someone who could bring new life to the role. And Jason, with his intensity and natural presence, fit perfectly. Once he accepted the role, the real work began. Jason had to prepare his body and mind for one of the most physically demanding characters in modern superhero films. Training became his life. He worked out for hours every day, sometimes from early morning until late at night. His routine included heavy lifting, swimming, martial arts, and strict diet control. The pressure to look perfect on screen was huge, and he pushed himself harder than anyone asked him to. He didn't want to disappoint fans or the studio. He wanted to prove that he deserved the chance he had been given. But the physical preparation was only part of the challenge. Filming long underwater scenes required intense breath control, patience, and endurance. Many scenes were shot in cold tanks, where Jason had to stay in freezing water for hours. The wires, harnesses, and special effects added even more stress to his body. Some days, he barely slept because he was too exhausted or too anxious about the next day's shoot. The schedule was heavy, the expectations were high, and Jason often felt like he was carrying the entire weight of the movie on his shoulders. Before Aquaman got his own standalone film, Jason first appeared in Justice League 2017. But the movie faced many problems: behind-the-scenes changes, reshoots, and mixed reactions from fans and critics. It didn't perform as expected at the box office and reportedly lost around $60 million. Jason felt the pressure immediately. He worried that the failure of Justice League would affect Aquaman's future. After years of struggling to find stable work, he feared that another setback could close the door on everything he had worked for. He tried to stay calm, but the stress was real. Then came 2018, the year Aquaman finally released. What happened next changed Jason's life forever. Instead of failing like Justice League, Aquaman became the first DC film in history to cross the $1 billion mark worldwide. Fans loved the new version of the character: strong, free-spirited, and connected to family and culture. Jason's personality fit the role perfectly, and people everywhere embraced him as the new face of the Ocean King. Overnight, he became a global icon. His posters were everywhere. Children dressed as Aquaman for Halloween. Fans lined up at events just to get a glimpse of him. The man who once struggled to pay bills was now one of the most recognizable actors in the world. But the success came with a cost that the public didn't see. Jason was constantly traveling, working, and promoting the film. He was pulled into endless interviews, red carpets, and press events. Everywhere he went, cameras followed him. People expected him to be strong, funny, and confident all the time. But inside, he was exhausted. He was proud of the film's success, but he also felt the pressure of keeping that success going. He wanted to enjoy the moment, yet he often felt overwhelmed by the attention and responsibilities. During interviews, Jason later admitted something that surprised many people. He said, "Fame doesn't heal, it only makes the silence louder." Even with fame, money, and recognition, he still carried old pains of childhood wounds, the fear of losing everything again, the pressure to provide for his family, and the stress of staying at the top in a demanding industry. Fame didn't erase the struggles he had faced for years. It didn't remove the insecurities he had buried. It simply added more expectations on top of them. Jason tried to stay grounded by focusing on his loved ones. He spent time with his children, supported Lisa, and enjoyed quiet moments at home when he wasn't filming. But as Aquaman's success grew, his schedule became even more demanding. He had to train for sequels, attend public events, and take on new roles. The attention followed him everywhere, and sometimes he found it hard to breathe under the pressure. The world saw confidence, charm, and strength. But behind those things was a man who had worked himself to the edge for years. Even with the heavy workload and emotional weight, Jason remained grateful. He knew how hard life had been before Aquaman, and he didn't take any opportunity for granted. But the truth was simple. The rise came with exhaustion, sacrifice, sleepless nights, and moments where he questioned whether he could keep going. Being a superhero on screen was easy compared to being one in real life. But long before the world crowned him a hero, fate had already carved into his flesh a reminder of mortality. Some scars are written in blood, and they rewrite a man's entire life. In 2008, long before Aquaman or global fame, Jason faced an incident that changed him forever. He was spending a normal evening with friends at Bird Cafe, a small bar in Hollywood. It was supposed to be a simple night out, nothing special. But one sudden moment turned the calm evening into a life-altering event. A man in the bar, who was drunk and aggressive, started a heated argument. Jason wasn't interested in fighting. He tried to calm things down and avoid trouble. But before anyone could react, the man attacked him with a broken glass. The shard cut across Jason's face in a quick, violent strike. It missed his left eye by less than a centimeter. The injury was deep and immediately serious. Blood flowed down his face, and the room went into shock. Friends rushed him to the hospital, trying to keep him awake and calm on the way. The damage was worse than anyone expected. Doctors had to place 140 stitches across his eyebrow and the side of his face to close the wound. The cut was long, painful, and dangerously close to blinding him. The medical team worked for hours to repair the damage and prevent infection. Even after the surgery, Jason was left with swelling, bruising, and a long road of recovery ahead. The physical healing took months. His face stayed swollen and tender for a long time. Smiling hurt, moving his eyebrow hurt. Even sleeping on the wrong side caused pain. He had to visit doctors regularly, clean the wound carefully, and protect the scar as it healed. Cameras were not kind to injuries, and Jason wasn't yet successful enough to take long breaks without worrying about his career. He had to balance recovery with the pressure of keeping his life moving. Every glance in the mirror reminded him of the close call. The scar remained as a clear mark of what he survived, but the emotional impact was even stronger. Jason later said that seeing so much of his own blood made him understand something about life, how quickly it can be taken away. Instead of living in fear, the experience pushed him in the opposite direction. It made him determined to live more boldly. He promised himself he would not hold back in his work, his dreams, or his life. The attack didn't make him angry. It made him focused. It reminded him that fear does not protect anyone. It only limits them. From that point on, he tried to live with more honesty, more purpose, and more courage. He also showed a rare level of grace toward the man who attacked him. Jason refused to publicly reveal the attacker's identity, even after the man received a prison sentence. He did not use the incident for publicity, sympathy, or personal gain. He treated it as a bad moment caused by a troubled person, not as a reason to hold a lifelong grudge. This quiet response showed a maturity that many people admired. He believed that holding anger only hurts the person who carries it, not the one who caused it. The scar across his eyebrow became one of his most recognizable features, But to Jason, it was more than a physical mark. It was a reminder of survival, of second chances, and of the strength he found during one of the darkest moments of his early career. It shaped the way he approached his roles, his life, and his sense of purpose. The incident taught him that he could face pain, recover from it, and continue forward stronger than before. But the worst was not behind him. Another brush with death waited years later on a sunlit California highway. Sometimes, destiny gives you warnings in the form of wreckage. While filming Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Jason pushed his body harder than ever before. He insisted on doing many of his own stunts, even when the scenes were physically demanding. The result was a series of painful injuries that would have forced most actors to step back. During production, he suffered a hernia, torn muscles, and even injuries to his eyes. There were days when he could barely sleep because the pain was so strong. Still, he kept showing up on set, telling himself that quitting was not an option. He wanted to give fans the best performance he could, even if it meant hurting himself in the process. These injuries added to the pressure he was already carrying. The long days, heavy costume, water scenes, and intense action pushed his body past its limits. He knew that superhero roles demanded perfection, and he didn't want to disappoint the people who believed in him. But behind the scenes, he struggled through every movement. Stretching his body hurt, lifting props hurt. Even simple actions like turning his head or raising his arms caused sharp pain. He later admitted that he was often exhausted and unable to rest properly. But he continued filming because he felt a responsibility to his crew, to the studio, and to his own sense of commitment. Then, in July 2022, another frightening moment arrived. While riding his motorbike on a sunny highway in California, a car suddenly crossed into his lane. Jason didn't have time to react. The motorbike crashed head-on into the vehicle. Metal twisted, glass shattered, and the force of the impact threw him forward. For a brief moment, everything went silent. When he stood up, shaken and confused, he realized how close he had come to a life-threatening accident. The motorcyclist from the other vehicle was taken to the hospital with minor injuries, but Jason himself walked away with only bruises and shock. Even though he survived physically, the emotional impact stayed with him. The accident made him stop and think about everything he had been pushing through: the injuries, the exhaustion, the heavy pressure of fame. Surviving the crash felt like a reminder that life can change in a single second. He felt grateful to still be alive, to still see his children, and to still have the chance to keep moving forward. But the fear did not disappear completely. It mixed with courage in a way that made him more aware of his choices. He understood that strength wasn't just about doing stunts or taking risks. Strength also meant admitting when something scared him and learning from it. Jason often looks fearless on screen, but he has always been open about the moments when fear becomes real. The injuries on set and the highway collision reminded him that even the strongest bodies have limits. Yet, he did not let fear control him. Instead, he tried to use those moments as signs to take better care of himself and to appreciate the people in his life more deeply. The experience also made him more committed to finding balance instead of letting work consume him completely. But even with all the physical pain and close calls, the biggest emotional challenge of his life was still ahead. The body can heal from injuries, and bruises can fade, but the heart is a different story entirely. Yet even pain could not prepare him for the heartbreak that would shatter the home he once believed eternal. The hardest battles are fought in silence, behind closed doors. For years, Jason and Lisa looked like one of the strongest couples in Hollywood. A bond built on trust, shared dreams, and a home filled with warmth. But long before the world knew anything was wrong, small cracks had already begun to form. When the pandemic arrived in 2020 and the world slowed down, their home became quieter in a way that felt unfamiliar. What was once a place full of conversation, laughter, and easy closeness slowly turned into a space where silence felt heavier than words. For a long time, their lives had moved in the same direction. They supported each other's work, raised their children with love, and created memories that felt almost sacred. But the truth was that Jason's rising career demanded constant travel, long months on set, and endless public attention. Meanwhile, Lisa preferred a life that was slower, private, and grounded. She wanted peace and still moments. He was pulled into movement, chaos, and the non-stop rhythm of Hollywood. These differences didn't appear all at once. They grew quietly, day by day, until the distance between them became hard to ignore. The pandemic forced both of them to face what had changed. In the stillness of lockdown, they realized how differently they now approached life. Jason still carried big dreams, chasing new projects and adventures because it was how he kept himself feeling alive and fulfilled. Lisa, on the other hand, wanted reflection, calm, and emotional stillness. They tried to meet each other halfway, but their hearts were quietly drifting in opposite directions. Love was still there, it didn't disappear, but it no longer moved in the same rhythm. Their emotional distance began affecting the children too. Lola and Nakoa felt the shift even before anyone spoke about it. Homes have a way of holding energy, and theirs felt heavier. Meals were quieter. Bedtime routines changed. The little moments that once held the family together started to feel rushed or incomplete. The children didn't always understand why things felt different, but they sensed it. They missed how their parents used to laugh together, how the house always felt full. Even though Jason and Lisa tried to protect them from the deeper issues, children can always feel when something is changing. By 2021, both Jason and Lisa could no longer ignore the truth. They loved each other deeply, but they were no longer growing in the same direction. The drift wasn't because of anger, betrayal, or conflict. It was because they had changed as individuals. Two good people, still caring, but walking different internal paths. Some nights, Jason sat outside alone, thinking about how much their life had transformed. Lisa did the same, staying quiet, trying to understand how something so strong could slowly become uncertain. In January 2022, they released a joint statement. They wrote about freeing each other to grow into the people they were becoming. Their message was calm, honest, and full of respect. It wasn't a dramatic breakup. It was two adults choosing honesty over holding on to something that no longer felt the same. It wasn't because love died. It was because they cared too much to force something that wasn't working anymore. Their divorce was finalized in January 2023. There were no fights, no public battles, no bitterness. Instead, there was acceptance. They agreed to co-parent their children with the same love and dedication they always had. The children continued living mostly with Lisa, but Jason remained heavily involved in their lives. He visited often, planned trips, helped with school events, and made sure they knew he was always there for them. He took Nakoa surfing, shared long talks with Lola, and worked hard to make their new family rhythm feel complete and safe. Over time, their relationship transformed into something different but still meaningful. They were no longer partners, but they remained connected through their children, through respect, and through the years of memories that shaped them. Jason often said that he carried deep gratitude for Lisa. She helped him grow into the man he became. She gave him two children who were the center of his world, and she shaped years of his life with love, even if that chapter eventually came to a close. Even after the breakup, Jason spoke gently about her. He said that love doesn't always stay in the same form, but it doesn't have to disappear. Their home might have changed, their roles might have shifted, but the bond remained. He still supported her choices, and she respected his. They created a modern family dynamic built on understanding instead of conflict. The fall of their marriage hurt him in ways that no physical injury ever could. Losing a shared life, shared dreams, and the daily closeness of a partner left him with a quiet ache that lasted long after the public announcements were forgotten. He had built so much of his identity around family, and now he had to rebuild again. This time not as a husband, but as a man learning to live with a different kind of love. But even shattered hearts can rediscover dawn in the most unexpected of people. Love doesn't always return with thunder. Sometimes it returns like sunrise. Long before the world linked their names, Jason and Adria first crossed paths while working on Sweet Girl in 2021. At the time, both were focused on their careers, and their connection stayed simple: professional warmth, casual conversations, and a natural ease around each other. Nothing dramatic happened then. The timing wasn't right, and life carried them in different directions. But sometimes, the universe plants seeds quietly, long before they bloom. Years passed. Jason went through heartbreak, personal change, and the painful process of rebuilding himself after his divorce. Adria, too, had gone through her own life transitions, and then, in early 2024, as if guided by something gentle and unseen, they met again. It wasn't a grand moment. No loud music, no spotlight, just two people crossing paths at a time when both were ready to feel something new. What began as a friendly reconnection slowly turned into something deeper, warm, calm, and unexpectedly healing. Their connection grew slowly, without pressure. There were no dramatic declarations or rushed decisions. Jason wasn't looking for a replacement for what he had lost. He wasn't trying to fill a void. Instead, he found comfort in Adria's presence, a quiet kind of peace he hadn't felt in years. She didn't overwhelm him. She didn't demand anything from him. She simply met him where he was, with understanding and patience. After everything he had been through, that gentleness mattered more than anything. People around Jason noticed the change. He smiled easier. He seemed lighter, more steady, more himself. Their time together wasn't built on big gestures. It was built on simple things: motorcycle rides, shared meals, walks, jokes, and the feeling of being able to breathe without pretending to be strong all the time. Adria brought a sense of grounded maturity into his life. She didn't try to fix his past. She didn't step into his home as a replacement figure. She respected his family, his children, and his emotional journey. What they created together felt natural, steady, and honest. By the time Jason openly confirmed their relationship in 2024, it was already clear that this bond wasn't about spectacle. It was about healing. Photos later surfaced from their travels. Japan, rooftop nights, quiet moments full of warmth rather than performance. In each picture, Jason looked genuinely at peace. Not the forced peace of someone pretending to move on, but the real kind that grows from acceptance and soft companionship. Their first major public appearance together was at SNL 50 in February 2025. Walking hand in hand on the red carpet, Jason carried a quiet glow. Not the electric energy of Aquaman or the fierce power of a warrior, but something gentler, like someone who has finally found a safe harbor after years of storms. To many fans, that appearance symbolized an emotional turning point for him. It showed a man ready to embrace joy again, not as a distraction, but as a natural continuation of life. For Jason, this new chapter wasn't about replacing the past. It was about learning that the heart can open again, slowly and softly. Adria represented not a burst of lightning, but a sunrise, steady, warm, and quietly full of hope. She brought laughter back into his days, calm into his nights, and a sense of balance he had long missed. Their relationship grew from mutual respect, shared values, and an understanding that love after pain doesn't have to be loud to be real. This wasn't the wild passion of youth, or the deep-rooted weight of a long marriage. It was something new, calm love, grown from maturity and honesty. A love that let him feel seen again. A love that didn't rush him. A love that reminded him that healing is possible, even after the heart has been broken more than once. But to understand the man he is now, we must meet the brother he lost and how grief shaped his purpose forever. A fulfilled life isn't measured in cameras flashing, but in the echoes of what remains when the lights go out. Today, Jason lives a life shaped by everything he has survived. Childhood struggles, career highs and lows, heartbreak, injuries, and personal rebirth. His world now is built on balance, family, purpose, and the quiet joys that fame can never replace. He divides his time between a warm, open home in California and a peaceful retreat in Hawaii. His California place is filled with wooden textures, plants, artwork, and the easy feeling of a lived-in family home. Hawaii, on the other hand, brings him closer to the ocean that shaped him. There, he walks barefoot in the sand, surfs at sunrise, and finds the calm that only nature can give. His passions fill his everyday life. Jason owns a collection of motorcycles, each one linked to a memory, long rides, road trips, and moments of freedom. He also treasures his vintage cars, especially his classic 1955 pink Cadillac. Surfboards line the walls of his spaces, each telling a story of waves, travels, and connection to the water. These things aren't signs of luxury to him. They are pieces of a life built from adventure, self-expression, and gratitude. His work outside acting is equally meaningful. He launched brands connected to sustainability eyewear, shoes, clothing, and reusable water products. These aren't just business projects, they reflect causes he truly believes in. Jason wants people to care about the environment, the ocean, and the world our children will inherit. His company choices and partnerships all mirror that mission. He has turned his influence into something that pushes for real-world change. Philanthropy plays a big role in his life, too. He supports ocean conservation, children's programs, and charity organizations. He spends time cleaning beaches, rescuing marine animals, and teaching kids about the sea. These moments allow him to use his voice for something bigger than entertainment. They also remind him of his roots of Hawaii, of childhood, and of the people who inspired him. Giving back keeps him grounded and connected to the values he learned early in life. But the most meaningful part of his world today is parenthood. His children, Lola and Nakoa, remain at the center of everything he does. They surf with him, hike with him, cook with him, travel with him, and learn from him. Jason teaches them about respect, strength, curiosity, and the importance of protecting the earth. They share adventures that fill their days with excitement, camping, diving, road trips, and creative projects. Even with a busy schedule, he's present, involved, and deeply devoted to their growth. Watching them find their own passions gives him joy that no movie role ever could. Adria also brings peace and balance into his life. Her calm energy, kindness, and steady presence give him space to breathe. They blend their worlds in a natural way. Quiet dinners, slow mornings, shared hobbies, and emotional support. She brings stability without controlling him, warmth without pressure. Their bond helps him live with clarity and gentleness, something he needed after years of chaos. All of Jason's experiences, every scar, every injury, every heartbreak, every career shift, have shaped the purpose he carries now. He's more reflective, more patient, more willing to choose peace over performance. He has learned that fame rises and fades, but inner peace stays, only if you protect it. He knows that strength comes from being honest, vulnerable, and willing to start over when life demands it. The storms he survived didn't defeat him. They taught him how to stand stronger, love deeper, and live more intentionally. Today, his legacy is not just about acting, it's about fatherhood, kindness, environmental responsibility, and living life with heart. It's about showing that a person can rise from wounds, rebuild after loss, and still remain humble. His story reminds people that resilience isn't loud. It's steady, patient, and built from everyday choices. And yet, after every storm he survived, one final truth remains, the truth that defines the man beyond the myth. Behind every wave he conquered lies a truth he carried since childhood. When you look at Jason's life as a whole, from Honolulu's shores to Iowa's silence, from heartbreaks to rebirths, from scars to triumphs, you don't just see a celebrity. You see a human being, shaped by everything he survived. His journey is not only about fame or roles that made him iconic, it's about the strength he built through struggle, the calm he found after chaos, and the love he carried even when life felt heavy. He grew up attached to the ocean, and even when life pushed him far from that world, its lessons never left him. The ocean taught him movement, resilience, and the ability to rise again after every fall. Those same lessons guided him through childhood loneliness, the challenges of adulthood, and the weight of expectations. The sea shaped him, but so did the people he loved: Simone, Lisa, Adria, his children, his friends, and even the ones he lost along the way. They all added meaning, taught him patience, or helped him rediscover parts of himself he had forgotten. Every scar he carries tells a story, not of weakness, but of survival. His face holds the mark of a night that almost changed everything. His body carries the signs of roles he gave everything to. His heart still remembers the love that grew, broke, and grew again. Through it all, Jason learned that strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about continuing even when life tries to stop you. He learned that fame brings noise, but real peace is something you have to build and protect on your own. As his story unfolds, it invites everyone watching to think about their own storms, their childhood losses, their heartbreaks, their moments of fear, confusion, and doubt. Jason's journey shows that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to hide the pain. You just have to keep moving, keep trying, keep believing that healing is possible, even after the hardest nights. His life proves that purpose can be found in struggle, and love can return even after everything falls apart. And in the end, when the cameras turn off and the world goes quiet, what remains is the truth. He always carried the truth that resilience is built, not gifted, and that even the deepest wounds can lead you to strength you never imagined. Because some stories don't end, they continue in the people they inspire.